Happy Monday to you guys. We got ourselves a Gnome weekend, we got ourselves a new toy to play with the Dervish class, which I'm kind of excited about, and we get a new Mythic on Friday. Sweet ass week in the books. Let's check it out right now. Kicking things off, we got ourselves a raid boss with Toxic Zool, as if there was any other kind, and it is Drifting Sands troops this time around. So of course, jump into the shop, get yourself your tier 3, get yourself this weapon. This weapon is going to create a mix based on Drifting Sands allies. So Drifting Sands is where the Dervish class exists, so we have a pretty decent class to pair this with. But Drifting Sands troops in general usually aren't so great. We do have Shahbanu in there, we do have Scorpius in there, but we're missing other stuff to really make this thing sing. So I think this weapon is going to have a lot of potential, although it may not initially. I, of course, tell you to get it, so make sure you get it. As far as teams you can use, there's a lot of weird ones. So this one's going to be taking advantage of Mountain Crusher with Scorpius and Scarabi as the poison enabler. This isn't the best poison enabler, but it's not the worst. It's going to do poison to 2 random people. So you're going to have to hope a little bit that Scarabi gets its thing off on the right people. However, since this is going to be using Scorpius, you will get an extra stat to this every single turn, which means the damage to the boss will be going up every single turn, so that part's kind of fun. You'll be able to poison people for Scorpius, but on top of all of that, we do get to just instant kill people with Scorpius that happen to be poisoned. So this team is a team that you could try to run on through. Separately, if you felt like being a little bit wild, you could use a Shahbanu team. This is going to basically have as much purple as possible. The hardest part about this team is going to be getting Shahbanu full initially, but once it is, you're just going to smack everything dead with the Doom Scythe once you have it up to like 5,000 damage. So this team should also be a lot more fun, a lot more interesting, just a little more dangerous because you do have to get Shahbanu completely full from 0. And if you don't have all those cool toys, this is a super weird version of a team that you could use using all fairly basic troops. So this is going to be using the new Tyran and Rex, so this is the, boss slayer this time around. This is basically just doing damage to the enemy, but then it also enrages or destroys a row, which is, whatever. Nothing all too exciting. As far as traits go, nothing really too crazy either. We do get an extra 3 stats in the first slot, which this team is actually going to use. We are going to use the new weapon, so this is going to give us a mix of brown and yellow. And then we are using the new glory troop in this lineup, which is Trihorn. So the reason we're using Trihorn here is because it's doing damage to the first enemy and then knocks them to the back. So it's going to swap the first person into the last slot, and then everyone moves up a slot. So in the Zool context, Zool's going to move up from 4th to 3rd position. But then it says it does it 2 more times. So then Zool's going to go up to the 2nd position, and then Zool's going to go up to the 1st position. So casting Trihorn once is going to get Zool up in the top slot. And of course, if you fully trade out your dude, it's going to be doing a ton of skull damage. And that's kind of fun. So this team is basically cast Trihorn to get Zool up top, and then hope you get a skull to smack him with. There's no real great way to create skulls within the Drifting Sands troops, so unfortunately there's a little bit of RNG there, but this team should be interesting and fun. It is a little glass cannon-y. It does require you casting Trihorn once and then hoping to find skulls, but admittedly running this kind of a lineup is probably safer than any Mang build that I could try and give you this time around. In the event keys, we've got Drifting Sands, of course. Drifting Sands, the land of lots of random-ass stuff. So this place has a couple mythics, both of which are fairly useful. So Scorpius, of course, is used for a lot of explore clearing these days. So if you just pair them with someone like a Urali, if you happen to have them, or a Magnus, if you happen to have them, anything that can poison a decent amount of people, Scorpius will just straight up kill them, so he's a fairly solid get, and he does make explorers fairly quick in the right types of kingdoms. Shahbanu is someone that's extremely interesting and random. I have a hard time deciding if I really love this troop or if I really wish this troop was slightly different, but they are used a decent amount. So this is giving a bunch of stats, well, a bunch of a stat to a specific ally, and then creating a bunch of gems and then repeating it a bunch of times. So this team, this Mythic, requires teams that have colors of a very specific type. So you want to try and create as pure of a color as you possibly can, ideally using one of the three that she has, so a pure blue, pure purple, pure yellow, as much pure as you possibly can be, which will pretty much guarantee that you can loop forever, you'll gain a ton of stats as you do it, and then, you know, you just eventually kill people. She does have a chance to just summon a Djinn at a 4 or more match, so that's okay, I guess. But Shahbanu, very, very interesting. So both of the mythics this time around, if you're opening up event keys, is pretty interesting. It doesn't mean you have a higher chance of getting a mythic because there's 2, so don't think that, like, well, I have more chances to get a mythic because there's 2 of them in there. That's not how it works. So unfortunately, if you get a mythic, it's going to be one or the other, but the odds of getting one is the same. In here, we also have the Great Maw, which is a very useful Devour type person. So in the early game, when you don't have access to a lot of instant kill options, Great Maw can be a way of just straight up eliminating someone from the game. You eat them and then you create a bunch of mana. Kind of fun. Not the troop that I use the most in any context, but he is pretty interesting. But that's kind of super it as far as what's in this place. The other person that you'd potentially be using is Desert Troll, of course, so this is creating a bunch of yellow, and then creates even more yellow. So if yellow mana is something you're trying to create a bunch of, Desert Troll could be fun. But that's about it. So if you're opening up keys, you're pretty much doing it for Scorpius or Shahbanu. Everyone else in here, not necessarily the best. In the Soulforge this time around, I will actually cover the Summoning Stones a little bit, because Lamashtu is in there, which is an empowered converter, turns yellows into purples. Very useful troop, but also in here is Firebombs and Pharaohhound, Pharaohhound being a very staple bounty troop, so opening up red Summoning Stones, not the worst. If you want a Lamashtu, decent place to get them. Just be aware it does use some of your jewels. In this case, it's using, I believe those are rubies. So be aware of that. Also in the brown Summoning Stone, we have Moira, who's an extremely powerful troop as far as murdering stuff. She's turning all greens into Doomskulls, which is super great. And then Goblin Shaman's in there, which is okay-ish. Drake Rider, also okay-ish. So as far as the Summoning Stones, those things exist. Once we get into the Mythic territory, that's where things kinda meh. So there's really nothing too exciting in here. We have Famine. Famine is very strong single target nuke, but it does require the other team to have basically full mana to do anything interesting. So I'm not a biggest fan of Famine. Yasmine's Chosen, fairly loopable troop, but the damage output not the best. So unfortunately, Yasmine's Chosen held back more by the fact that her spell damage is super low, but she is fairly loopable. You will entangle a bunch of people by having her, so that part's pretty nice. Phoenicia's in there. Phoenicia can enable a lot of really quick low-level event stuff, so if you're doing like pet rescues, if you're doing low-level explores, if you're doing casual PvP at tier 1, Phoenicia is really, really great at that since her damage output is so high, assuming you're running a Sunspear or just happen to have a Firestorm running. So Phoenicia, not something you're going to use for higher level content necessarily, but for lower level content, Phoenicia is a god amongst women. Amongst men? Amongst people. Phoenicia. And then Shade of Zorn in there, which is just straight up garbage, but, you know, he exists. On the weapon side, man oh man are there a ton of weapons you could maybe craft. So Blade of Sands is not one of them. It does damage to the last enemy, and then if there happens to be a dust storm, it removes all the green gems. It doesn't get you the green gems, it just gets them off the board. So that weapon's kinda meh. The Stone Staff's in there, which is, you know, also kinda meh. Not a fan of any of the elemental staffs as far as I'm concerned. Crystal Axe, however, is a very cool weapon, which is creating a mix based on monsters, so if the Dervish class is a class you like, this weapon is basically the Dervish's best friend. So creating a mix based on monsters, very, very cool. But then Doomdax is in there, which is obviously the hotness. So if you do have the diamonds for it, this is the thing that you want to be crafting. All of these creating Doomskull versions of these weapons are the best. So this weapon, incredibly powerful, super useful, #1 craft if you can afford it. And then that's about it. So highest priority Doomdax, then the Crystal Axe, and then that's it. But now, let's go check out the spoil. On Tuesday, it's City of Thieves. City of Thieves, pretty decent farming kingdom, so this is the team that I use to smash on through. Pretty great place if you're looking to get some gold and resources from delving. As you can tell from the room layout, really easy to farm it, and we do have a level 5, a level 5, a 4, a 4, a 4, and a 3 and a 2. So as far as overall, you know, potential here, we've got a decent amount. So if you're looking for a farming delve, this one's kind of fun. Of course, if you're doing the faction assault, don't take it too high. Unless you only want it to go up to level 50, then of course you can always fall back to level 50, but City of Thieves, decent farming place. That's the team I use. That is on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we get ourselves a pet rescue for this little mothy boy, Flutter, mine's Fluffer, in the Pet Rescue Wednesday. This dude is doing air mastery here, nothing too crazy or special, but it's there on Wednesday. Get yourself that super cute little moth boy this Wednesday. On Thursday, we have a class event for the Dervish. Dervish, of course, is your stat pumpy for all monsters. So you get Skull Dodge, which is kind of whatever, but you also get the ability to give all monsters on your team 2s to all stats, including magic, on every 4 or 5 match. So if you can loop your face off with a bunch of monsters on your team, you are in for a great time with the Dervish class. As far as talent trees go, it's also not terrible. So the Wind Tree you can kind of throw away since it's really bad. But in the Cunning Tree you get Hunter's Marks on 4/5s, which is nice. You do have the potential to start with the Dust Storm if that's what you're into. You also get Lightning Strike, which is kind of fun. Exploding the board every time you get a 4 or 5, which is very nice for different board setups and jumbles. So, Dervish class, pump your stats a ton with all monsters. It's a pretty sweet class. As far as teams that you could use, it would be this one. So if you have lots of toys, I would use a Mountain Crusher with a Great Maw and a Scorpius and a Scarabi. This will be able to instant kill people with either Devour from Great Maw or potentially just with Scorpius. And if people are Devour immune and Poison immune, then this team will just do a lot of damage anyway. Since Scorpius will be scaling as you run through, you'll have barriers with Titan. Should be a good time. Separately, if you don't have a lot of toys, you could use this, which is kind of a slot machine, but also kind of fun. So this is again going to be using a Mountain Crusher for mana. Sandshark has a 25% chance to just eat people, so that's going to be kind of fun. It does a decent amount of damage to somebody. Trihorn does some decent damage to people. Scarabi does some decent damage to people. So this team is kind of set up to be use Mountain Crusher to get barriers as much as you possibly can, and then use these people to slowly whittle everybody on the other team away. Then on Friday, we got 2 things going on. First of which is that Friday starts the Vault weekend, so these people are going to be showing up in all your fights. If you're looking to do lots of Explore spam, lots of casual PvP at tier 1, whatever it is you do, you're going to see these people show up and hopefully get yourself a ton of Vault keys in the process. So prepare yourself to murder a bunch of gnomes this weekend. Then on Friday, we get ourselves a new Mythic in Will of Nysha. So Will of Nysha exists. I'm saying Nysha because I believe I heard Salty pronounce it that way, so that's going to be how I try and say it from now on. But Will of Nysha, so this troop seems okay, but nothing crazy. In the early game, this troop would be literally amazing, but for endgame players, we're going to have to figure out what we want to do with this troop. So as far as what the spell does, it's doing stealing of magic from all enemies, so we're going to steal a total of 12, assuming everyone's alive. And then it does kind of regular old damage to everybody. So what's interesting about the wording on this spell is that it doesn't seem to imply that Submerge is going to work on it. It seems to imply that it's going to steal magic and then it's going to directly deal damage to everybody. We'll have to see the spell cast. If I watched the developer preview of it, I would know this answer. But it appears as though it does damage in a non-damage to all kind of way. So maybe Submerge won't work, but potentially it will. So the spell effect is kind of this like Suna-ish thing where you're stealing magic and then using that magic against everybody with the spell cast, which means you're going to have to cast it a bunch of times for it to actually be super useful. So unfortunately the spell cast, it's kind of like I would have to cast this 3-4 times for me to feel confident. What's nice about this is that it does take brown, which seems to align it nicely with Mountain Crusher kind of build, so it should be very easy to get at mana in that instance. So in that way, it's kind of good. As far as its traits, we've got ourselves, of course, the Essence of Magic, which is giving all purple allies 1 stat at the start of every turn, which again, for early game players is fairly great. For end game players, hopefully your games aren't lasting more than a couple turns, a few turns, certainly no more than 5 to 10 turns, hopefully. As far as the second trait, we've got Spell Block. Spell Block is actually really nice, so they're going to be very survivable in your lineup. 50% spell reduction puts it on par with Tina, which is of course a spell reduction maniac. So this part, pretty darn good. They'll be very survivable. And then gaining 1 life for each purple ally, sure, whatever. So this mythic, I believe, is going to be fairly like mid to low tier as far as its use goes. Unfortunately, stealing magic, it's not stealing a ton of magic, so you're not going to be able to turn something like a life and death into like a little kitty cat. You're going to have to cast this troop like 5 to 10 times to get something completely magic drained, which is not really great. And then the damage output's going to be not really great, at least for the first like 2 to 3 casts. So it's someone that you're going to have to constantly give over your turn if you want to take advantage of their spell, which makes me not super excited about this mythic. So of course I'm going to go chasing it. Of course it's new and shiny, I want it. But as far as its use goes, I don't see it being used kind of anywhere. Phoenicia would be a better straight up AoE damage dealer for lower level content. For higher level content, this would have to be cast one too many times for me to consider using it over something like, you know, if I was trying to kill really high level people, like instant kill mechanics like a Scorpius or a High King Irongut. I would lean for those much quicker than I would lean for something like this. So its placement as far as its spell ability goes, a little hard to place. So of course I'm going to get it, or try to, this Friday, and I hope you can get yours. Will of Nysha out there in all your various key locations, just not event keys, starting Friday. Best of luck to you guys. And that is everything that's going on the PC, mobile, Xbox, PlayStation side of things. I hope you can get yourself that hot new mythic. I hope you enjoy spamming the crap out of your various game modes to get them gnomes, get them keys, get them orbs, I hope. But that's all for you guys. Let's jump over to the Switch folks. Switch folks, you guys have yourselves some Guild Wars, which means today you are setting all of your defenses, you're purchasing your sentinels, and you're brushing up on your Guild Wars tactics. If you want to understand what Guild Wars is, feel free to check out my video which goes over what it is, how to do it, all that good stuff. But enjoy your Guild Wars this week. In the Glory Shop, you guys have Lapina Explorer. Lapina Explorer is actually pretty darn great if you're an early game player. So this is destroying a row and a column, and then it's knocking 2 people to the back. But then it's also dealing damage to the first 2 people boosted by green gems you happen to catch in that plus symbol that you're creating with this destroy thing on a ×4 boost. So Elwyn is a troop that a lot of people might throw around for early game players. Lapina Explorer is a much better version of Elwyn. So if you're looking for a really strong damage dealer in the early game, like we're talking you're still unlocking your kingdoms level early, then Lapina Explorer is actually going to be your best friend. So please make sure you grab one if you're an early game player. If you're a later game player, then you know, it's just a little bunny boy that you can kind of chuck in your inventory. Early game players, this is your new best friend. Also, this time around in the event keys, there is a new legendary that is exclusive to event keys. So if you're opening up event keys, you're hoping to get yourself the new legendary in Starflower. Starflower is kind of random, so she's dealing damage to everybody. That part's okay. It's boosted by ally and enemy Fae, which even though the boost is pretty high, putting a team of pure Fae is pretty hard to do. Putting together, you know, or praying that the enemy has a bunch of Fae is pretty random, so you're not really going to get a ton out of this boost, unfortunately. It does have a chance to summon a Fae, well, it just will if you have an open slot, I should say. And then there's a chance it transforms somebody into a pixie, which is, you know, not the best troop. So this troop is okay. I wouldn't say it's amazing. Again, early game players would get a lot of benefit out of a troop like this, but end game players, Starflower is really not used pretty much at all. Trait-wise, it has a 50% chance to fairy fire someone at the start of your turn. I don't like start of your turn stuff, so I'm not the biggest fan of that. It does have a little bit of spell reduction, that's okay. It does gain a magic whenever someone casts a spell, that's cool. So Starflower is out there, pretty much a do damage to all troop with a little bit of bells and whistles, but nothing too crazy. But that is your new legendary in the event keys exclusively this week. In the Soul Forge for you guys, Infernus is sitting in there. So Infernus, I'm sure you have heard of before in lots of tier lists or mythic conversations. And basically where Infernus kind of sits is that if you have a class that has the ability to do triple skull damage when people are burning all the way up to 100, so this is your Sun Spears, your Dragon Guards, those types of classes, anyone with the Fire Tree, you have a Fire Tree class all the way up to 100, Infernus becomes incredibly useful and interesting. If you don't have a Fire class all the way up to 100, its spell is pretty darn solid regardless. So it's doing splash damage to 2 people, it's exploding the board. Whenever someone dies, it creates a firestorm. So overall, just really solid damage output. Loop ability creates a storm that's useful to itself. So Infernus is very darn solid from a damage output perspective. He's not going to be used pretty much in any events, but in terms of PvP, this spell is going to be fairly darn good, as well as this thing turns them all the way up to 11. So if you have a class that has a fire tree all the way up to 100, Infernus is absolutely the craft you want this time around. But if you don't have one of those, the other troop that's in there that's kind of worth considering is Yasmine's Chosen. So Yasmine's Chosen is somebody that's going to be entangling constantly anytime you match greens. You're going to be matching a lot of greens because she creates 10 of them every time you cast her. And then the damage output she does is boosted by the number of entangled people. So the damage output part of this is a little deceptive. Since this is scatter damage, it's spread across everybody on the other team. So the damage output's not going to feel all that exciting until everybody's basically dead. The boost on it is good, but again, the max on this is plus 40. So spread across 4 people, that's going to be about 25 damage to each. Not really all that exciting, and that's assuming everybody's entangled. But where she really shines is green mana generation and entangling. So Yasmine's Chosen, a fairly decent mythic, also out there to craft. Those would be the only 2 that I would even consider this week. On the weapon front, however, this is where you must craft this weapon. So Yasmine's Pride is out there. This is destroying all the enemy on some person and then giving everyone on your team a crap ton of life. So it's a 3-to-1 boost ratio, so if they have 100 life and you cast this on them, or I'm sorry, 100 armor and you cast this on them, then everyone on your team is going to be getting, you know, an extra 30 plus life, plus the original amount of life that it's going to give. So everyone on your team gets a ton of life. And why that matters is because there's troops like Ketris, there's troops like Yao, who can turn the amount of life that they have into extra damage. So this weapon becomes very useful for scaling event type stuff. You'll see me put this weapon on delve teams and certain event teams, for instance. So Yasmine's Pride is very useful. So please make sure you jump into the Soul Forge and craft this bad boy, if at all you can. Of course, on Friday for you guys as well, it is going to be a vault weekend, so doing explore spamming, doing casual PvP at tier 1 for instance, anything you can do to get as many fights in as possible. Gnomes will be showing up, you'll have increased drop rates for vault keys, so hopefully you get a bunch of vault keys, a bunch of orbs, beat the crap out of all these annoying people, starting on Friday. But prepare your butts for this mythic. On Friday, you guys will also get the release of a new mythic in all key locations that can drop mythics except for the event keys. This is going to be Obsidius. Obsidius is sick. He's awesome. So damage output wise, he's doing heavy splash damage to random person, and then he's destroying a 5x5 block, so this is 25 gems worth of mana you're going to be grabbing every time you cast him. And then there's a 50% chance he does that same spell ability, not the destroy part, but the splash damage to somebody else in a light splash damage. So this damage output can be not the best, it's not like crazy, but it is useful. You do get a lot of mana by destroying this chunk of stuff, and then you have the chance to loop, of course. But what makes Obsidius the man is this earthquake thing. So he stuns everybody on the other team on any 4-5 match. So if you've ever fought a team that has like a bunch of lusts on the other team, or a life and death team that you can't really like figure out how you're gonna stun them, or some troop in the top slot that's got like 75% reduction from skull damage, and you want to figure out how to stop all that, you just put Obsidius on your team and you match a 4-5 of any kind, and every single person on the other team is stunned. So Obsidius, incredibly effective in PvP and Guild Wars. For events, not really all that much, but for PvP and Guild Wars, Obsidius is like really top tier mythic to have. So this Friday, make sure you're saving up all them keys so you can hopefully get yourself this big beefy demon boy starting Friday. So there you have it, folks. Everyone's getting a new mythic, we're all getting vault key weekend goodness, and some other cool toys to play with throughout the week. So not the worst week in Gems of War that we've ever had. I'm pretty darn happy about it. Of course, make sure you follow me on Twitch. I'll say the one time here in case anyone's still at this part of the video. Please subscribe to the channel. I don't say it much, but you know, just do it, because you love me, and I love you. But that's all I got for you guys this week. So thanks, of course, tune into my streams, otherwise I will see you in a future video. Love you guys. Have an awesome week. Peace.